別れよう、ひな。
え？
好きな子ができたっていうか。
Welcome to Tokyo Ravengers Season 2. Last time, Hakai, suspected of being a spy, requests to leave Taman, but Manjiro denies his request, leaving Hakai with a tough decision. The Taman leaders know that the stakes are high, and there is no easy solution in sight. Hakai reminisces about how he met Takashi during his youth. He vividly remembers the moment he was beating up some kid, and then Takashi intervened. Takashi, who was also taking care of his siblings, advised Hakai to use his strength to protect others, not hurt them. Despite Takashi's wise words, Hakai is skeptical about his abilities to sway Taiju's mind. He believes that their encounter will not end well. However, Takashi is determined to have a conversation with Taiju and understand why Takemichi and Shifuyu are tagging along. Takemichi explains that he is there because he was the one who got beaten up, and Shifuyu clarifies that he is keeping a close eye on Takemichi, who he thinks is a moron. Eventually, Takashi meets up with Taiju to form a truce. He promises that Hakai will join Black Dragon and never interfere with Taiju again, but only if Taiju releases Yuzuha. Taiju believes that Takashi is playing a prank on him and refuses to accept the condition. Takashi explains to Taiju that Hakai is not leaving Taman because he is scared of him, but to protect his sister from his abuse. Taiju gets enraged and tries to punch Takashi, but he blocks the attack. Takashi warns Taiju that if he doesn't accept the truce, it will lead to a full-scale war between Taman and Black Dragon. Finally, Taiju agrees to the truce, but he clarifies that he never abused Yuzuha and will not hit her again. As the situation intensifies, Takemichi realizes that Hakai might kill Taiju to protect his sister. After their departure, Hakai warmly thanks Takashi, who responds with wise words of encouragement, urging Hakai to use his strength for the greater good. Hakai's mind drifts back to a childhood memory where he recalls visiting Takashi and being taken aback by his selfless nature. Despite his own hardships, Takashi had prepared food for his siblings while his mother was away at work. Hakai had felt for his friend's situation and expressed his sympathy, but Takashi had humbly reminded him to be grateful for what he had and not curse his life. Now, in the present, Takashi echoes the same sentiment, leaving Hakai feeling even more inspired to do good in the world. However, Takemichi's mind is still preoccupied with the future and the faith of Yuzuha. He considers the possibility of going back in time to change the outcome, but Shifuyu reminds him that things may not have changed even if Yuzuha has been released. As Takemichi faces the possibility of being stuck in the future due to his arrest, Hakai appears with an urgent request to speak with him. Hakai starts by opening up about his family's struggles, explaining that their mother is absent and their father is almost never home. As the eldest, Taiju had taken charge and ruled the family with an iron fist. Hakai grew up thinking that love was supposed to hurt and that beating others was the only way to assert dominance. But then, Takashi came along and turned Hakai's world upside down. Rather than playing, Takashi stepped up and took care of his siblings. He urged Hakai to use his strength to protect others and inspired him to break away from the cycle of violence. Sadly, Taiju wasn't on board with Hakai's new outlook on life. He promised to stop beating up Yuzuha, but then went back on his word and continued to inflict pain on his own family. Hakai felt helpless in the face of Taiju's wrath, but he knew he had to do something. That's when Hakai made the difficult decision to leave Taman. He didn't want to tarnish the gang's reputation or drag Takemichi into his problems. Instead, he resolved to protect his family and take down Taiju once and for all. Meanwhile, Takashi and Yuzuha had their own troubles to contend with. Yuzuha was relieved to be freed from her job collecting payments for Black Dragon, but Takashi suspected there was more to the story. As he and Manjiro became the founding members of a new gang, Takashi vowed to never leave his new family behind. Takemichi takes a deep breath and tries to reason with the officers again. He emphasizes that if they don't act now, it may be too late. Despite his persuasive arguments, the officers remain unconvinced. Frustrated, Ken interjects and proposes an alternate solution. He suggests that they should gather more information before making any rash decisions. However, Takemichi is not willing to wait. Left with no other options, Takemichi and Shifuyu reluctantly decide to go it alone. But just when they think they're on their own, Teta returns, determined to lend a hand. At first, Shifuyu is hesitant to work with Teta, but Teta makes a compelling case. He explains that Manjiro is no longer the same man he used to be, and Black Dragon has only grown stronger. Teta is resolute in his conviction to crush Black Dragon, and his determination is infectious. But before they can get started, Shifuyu loses his temper and shatters a glass. He points a sharp piece of it at Teta and reprimands him for thinking he's better than the rest of them. It's clear that tensions are running high and the situation could escalate quickly. Shuji intervenes and points a knife at Takemichi, reminding them that infighting is strictly prohibited. Shifuyu eventually calms down and poses a question that's been on everyone's mind. What's in it for them? Teta's response is simple but compelling. He has an informant in Black Dragon, and he can help them get the intel they need to strike back. It's an offer they can't refuse, and they agree to go with Teta to gather more information. The four of them go meet with Teta's informant, where Teta wants to know all about Taiju and what he is doing each day. The informant is Taiju's gopher, so he knows a lot about it, but before he is able to say anything, Hajime Kakano shows up. Hajime states things didn't go well for the last rat and tells the other Black Dragon members to take the informant. Teta tells Hajime that they don't intend to fight him. Seeing the money on the table, Hajime states he will tell them what they want for 100,000 yen. Teta hands him the money and asks when will Taiju be alone. Hajime explains that Taiju is never alone and there are always 5 people with him, except on one day, December 25th. Taiju is Christian, and each Christmas night he goes alone at night to church to worship. As Teta has no other questions, Hajime decides to leave, but states that Taiju isn't weak and doubts the 4 of them can take him out. Takemichi wonders why is Hajime betraying Taiju, and Hajime explains that he likes the strong, but if he wants to know more, they should bring him another 100,000 yen. After Hajime leaves, Teta tells Takemichi that he didn't want to know when Taiju will be alone just to attack him. As Hakai intends to kill him, he will also be waiting for such a moment. Takemichi wonders why is Teta doing this, and Teta explains he wants to help his teammates. Teta then states that the 4 of them will stop Hakai and destroy Taiju in their secret battle on Christmas night. Will our ragtag group of allies be able to stop the tyrant Taiju? Before we find out, take a quick moment to answer the question of the day. What's stronger, skill or raw power? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. Despite his doubts about Manjiro's ability to handle the weight of Keisuke Baji's death, Teta is determined to keep Toman afloat. In order to do so, he enlists the help of Takemichi and Shifuyu, urging them to keep the mission a secret from the rest of the gang. As Teta leaves, Takemichi is left grappling with a difficult decision. Though Shifuyu initially balks at the idea of working with Teta, Takemichi sees it as their only option to prevent the dark future he witnessed. In a risky move, they decide to ally with Teta, hoping to uncover information that will help them topple him from his seat of power. As they inform Teta of their decision, they make it clear that their partnership is only temporary, with an end date of Christmas. They have no desire to befriend the man responsible for the deaths of their friends, but are willing to work with him to achieve their goals. In the end, it's a precarious situation for Takemichi and Shifuyu, but the resolve to change the future and protect Hakai at all costs outweighs their reservations about working with Teta. The following day, as Takemichi makes his way home, he runs into Hinata and Naoto strolling along the streets. They greet each other warmly and soon find themselves seated on a nearby bench, chatting away. Hinata expresses her excitement for the upcoming Christmas celebration, and Takemichi realizes that he had made plans with her for that very day, but also has to deal with Taiju. The predicament is not lost on him. Naoto, being a stickler for time, decides to make his exit, much to Takemichi's surprise. He remarks on how Naoto sounds a lot like Teta, and Hinata confirms that they knew each other from their elementary school days. They used to walk home together after attending a cram school, and Teta was the brightest kid there. Hinata hasn't seen him since he left for a private middle school. Takemichi drops the bombshell that Teta is now a member of the notorious Taman gang, and Hinata is taken aback. However, she thinks that Takemichi and Teta would get along well, since both of them are kind-hearted souls. She even reveals that the first time they met, Teta was with her. The conversation takes a nostalgic turn when Hinata recounts a childhood incident where they rescued a cat from some bullies. Takemichi, who was dressed in a cape, heroically intervened and got beaten up in the process. The memory of Takemichi's valiant act, although somewhat bittersweet, remains etched in their minds. As the evening draws to a close, Takemichi bids Hinata goodbye, reminding her to be careful in her future endeavors. Although Takemichi doesn't remember the incident, he believes he may have done what Hinata is talking about. In spite of being beaten up, he came to help, which Hinata thinks is amazing. As she recounts the incident, she reveals that it was that day when she fell in love with him. Shocked at this revelation, Takemichi is surprised to learn that she has loved him for such a long time. Before leaving, Hinata reminds him of their Christmas Eve date at Umeshita Park. Overwhelmed with joy, Takemichi realizes that he can finally be with her on the 24th and deal with Taiju the next day. However, his happiness is short-lived as he remembers Hinata telling him in the future that he dumped her on that very same day at Umeshita Park. He tries not to think about it, but his curiosity gets the best of him. Suddenly, a man approaches him, and Takemichi mistakes him for Naoto. The man then introduces himself as Masato Tachibana, the father of Hinata and Naoto. The two go to a coffee shop, and Masato reveals that he has heard a lot about Takemichi from his wife. He expresses his gratitude towards Takemichi for being a positive influence on Naoto, who wants to become a police officer. While Masato is unsure whether Naoto can handle the job, Takemichi assures him that he will be an excellent cop. Pleased to know that Takemichi is as nice as he had heard, Masato then asks him for a favor. Meanwhile, Hinata returns home and asks her mother if she still loves Masato. Her mother confirms it, and Hinata wishes that she could say the same thing about Takemichi 10 years from now. After Masato's departure, Takemichi is left with a heavy heart as he recalls his friend's request. Masato only wants the best for Hinata, but he knows that Takemichi's dangerous lifestyle could harm her. As Takemichi reflects on this, his mind races with questions and uncertainties. In an attempt to move forward, Takemichi decides to end things with Hinata on Christmas Eve. With a heavy heart, he musters the courage to tell her that he likes someone else and wants to break up. As expected, Hinata is devastated and lashes out at Takemichi in anger. Left alone with his thoughts and emotions, Takemichi can't help but cry and wonder what his future holds. He knows he loves Hinata, but he also knows that he can't put her in harm's way. Later on, Takemichi meets with his friends Chifuyu, Shuji, and Teta. They devise a plan to stop Taiju and Hakai from causing any harm. They will ambush Taiju outside Udagawa Christ Church in Shibuya, where he will be alone on Christmas Eve. Teta urges Takemichi to talk to Hakai and reason with him, while the others prepare to take on Taiju. With a heavy heart and a sense of uncertainty, Takemichi heads towards the church, hoping that everything will work out in the end. On Christmas Eve, Hakai, dressed as a member of the Black Dragons, is more than ready to settle things tonight. As Seishu steps in to inform the Black Dragons of their plans for the day, Hajime stands close by, waiting for the right moment to make his move. Seishu can't help but wonder what Hajime is thinking, but it's not long before he finds out. Hajime has decided to stick with Seishu, keeping his promise, but his nonchalant attitude leaves Seishu feeling uneasy. Looking back on his time in Taman, Chifuyu can recall a time when he was faced with some serious challenges. As a new member, he was immediately met with resistance and hostility from some of the others, but he wasn't about to back down. In a move that surprised everyone, Chifuyu took on the 3 guys who had been giving him a hard time and came out victorious. However, his moment of glory was short-lived as Keisuke arrived on the scene, unhappy with the chaos he saw before him. After the altercation, Keisuke had some wise words for Chifuyu, reminding him that he was no longer alone and that he needed to start acting like a team player. Chifuyu didn't need much convincing, though, as he had joined Tamon with the sole purpose of being part of Keisuke's division. It wasn't long before Keisuke took him under his wing and gave him the guidance he needed, telling him to follow only him and stick by his side. Chifuyu begins the meeting by telling Takemichi about his past life, a life filled with hatred and violence. But then something miraculous happened. Keisuke entered his life, and it was a game changer. Keisuke's principles and beliefs were so profound that they had a massive impact on Chifuyu. Takemichi's eyes widen as Chifuyu hands him Keisuke's sash, a symbol of his profound legacy. Takemichi hesitates, but then he accepts the sash. Chifuyu helps him tie it up, and he makes a promise that he will follow the footsteps of the man who had such a profound impact on Shifuyu's life. Excitement fills the air as the two walk towards the church, but Takemichi knows the real test of his newfound ideals awaits him. Takemichi is quick to act as soon as they reach the church, heading inside to face off against Hakai, while leaving Teta and Shuji outside to take care of Taiju. Inside the church, Takemichi is surprised to see Hakai and wonders why he is there. Teta's prediction of Takemichi's presence proves correct as he realizes he is there to change Hakai's mind. Takemichi tries to reason with Hakai, but the stubborn Hakai refuses to budge, stating that if he kills Taiju, it will keep Yuzuha safe. Takemichi vehemently disagrees and tells him that taking a life is not the solution. Takemichi reveals his broken heart as he had to break up with Hinata to keep her safe. He is weak, but his love for Hinata is his strength. Takemichi asks Hakai if he thinks Yuzuha would grieve if he took a life, but Hakai still can't see the truth. Despite everything, Takemichi remains determined to stop Hakai for the sake of everyone's safety. In that pivotal moment, Taiju steps into the church, sending a ripple of confusion through Takemichi's mind. He can't help but wonder what Teta and the others are up to. Taiju, on the other hand, is equally bewildered about their unexpected arrival. Just as the tension seems to be escalating, Hakai suddenly lunges at Taiju, brandishing a knife. Meanwhile, Shuji manages to subdue Chifuyu and advises him to stay out of the brotherly brawl. As they exit, Shuji can't help but speculate that Teta had been plotting against them from the very start. Teta's response is unapologetic. He had done it all for the thrill of it. Shuji is left amused, hailing Teta as the only one who knows how to keep him entertained. In the midst of the chaos, Yuzuha catches Taiju off guard, plunging the knife into his flesh. Taiju swiftly disarms Hakai, who is now in dire straits. A stunned Takemichi realizes that Teta had indeed betrayed them, but it looks like Hakai was prevented from carrying out his deadly intentions. As Taiju confronts Takemichi, he hurls him to the ground, warning Hakai that if he doesn't comply, he will execute Takemichi. Taiju then presses Takemichi, demanding to know why Hakai wants him dead. Takemichi replies that it's because of Taiju's cruel treatment of Yuzuha, but Taiju only laughs in response. He decides to reveal Hakai's dark secret, and as he begins to spill the beans, Hakai begs him not to. Just as Taiju is about to unveil the truth, Yuzuha emerges from the shadows and drives the knife into Taiju's back. Taiju punches Yuzuha with ferocity, his frustration and anger boiling over. Hakai is taken aback and demands an explanation, and Yuzuha barely steps forward to explain why she's there. Hakai is livid and turns his ire on Takemichi, suspecting that he betrayed them. Takemichi denies it, and Yuzuha backs him up with the truth, that she heard it from Teta. As Takemichi begins to realize that his efforts have been in vain, he also notices that Taiju's wound is not as severe as it should be. He realizes that he has changed the future and that Teta's hold on Hakai has been broken. Taiju is devastated by the betrayal of his siblings, and Yuzuha is quick to point out his flaws. Taiju lashes out, punching Yuzuha with all his might. As he weeps in despair, he begs for answers from a seemingly uncaring god. Despite the tense and emotional situation, Takemichi remains determined to change the future for the better. With each new piece of information, he realizes that his actions have a greater impact than he ever thought possible. How will things unravel? Will Taiju be stopped, or will he wipe the floor with Takemichi? Find out on our next recap of Tokyo Revengers Season 2.